My name is Amytza. My pronouns are she, her. I identify as a Gujurican. I am Indian and Puerto Rican. Please do not call me Puerto Rican, because that's like, no. Puerto Rican. My family is from Puerto Rico on my mom's side and India on my dad's side. I speak English, Spanish, and a little bit of Arabic, Hindi, Gujarati. And this is what looking bilingüe means to me.
You've got this nickname that's Gujurican, right? Share with us what that means and what it means to you.
Oh my gosh, Gujurican.
I love that, by the way. I love that.
No, girl. Gujurican was born 20 years ago. In high school, when I started high school. And Gujurican comes from my ethnic backgrounds. Guju actually references Gujarati, which is the language that my father grew up speaking, amongst others, in India. So he was born in Maharashtra, India, that state of Maharashtra, in Pune, but his mother tongue is Gujarati. Gujarat is another state in India. So growing up in New Jersey, there's a lot of people that have a Gujarati background, and for short, people say, "Oh, you're Guju," or that's a Guju way. So Guju is the first part of that name. Rican, Puerto Rican, and my mom is from Puerto Rico, and that name was born out of a love for representation and my identity and culture, and coming to my own sense of ownership of that mixed race identity, that this blend, this biracial experience that I have. And to be honest with you, I recall being in elementary and middle school and like not really fully, I think, even understanding what that meant for me to have these multiple cultures in my life. And I think it became more of a complete experience and journey when I entered high school with 2,000 people in Edison, New Jersey, public school, and everyone's like, "Well, what are you?" And so,
the question.
that is and I was looking something. I was looking hella bilingual. I was looking racially ambiguous. I was looking something all right? And so I think in the spirit of both honoring other people's requests to define myself, but also in my own journey to be like, well, how do I shine my light here? Like, how do I represent this luscious, rich culture and lifestyle that I've an upbringing that I've lived with? And Gujurican was born in good old 2002 or 2001, something like that.
I love that. And it's funny because I have a similar one for myself. Mine is Americubarican, because that's how I explain, well, the Cuba, the Rican, but the Amera part, because, I'm always talking about like, well, yeah, but I've got my Jersey stuff, right? And I kind of made that into Amera. Maybe I should be Jersey Cuba Rican.
Girl, do it. You can upgrade, up level.
We can just keep
evolve
different layers. I don't think it'll be a surprise to anybody that you are also a music and theater person. I seem to be a little biased. Who knows why? And so how have music and dance played an instrumental role in your experience as a multiracial woman?
Oh, girl, it's everything. I believe that we all as human beings are creators. I believe we have been created, right? And therefore we all have the gift and potential of creativity. And so I think it's not surprise you have taken the time to cultivate yourself and your light, and you attract people into your spheres of influence that also have taken the time to cultivate, the gift of music, the gift of dance, theater, self-expression, spoken word. And so I feel very blessed because from a young age, I was 2 years old, and a construction worker in my house told my parents, "Hey, you got a singer there, you got a star there," because I was singing Mother Goose, right? So we all have a voice. And I think the gift of starting singing as young as 2 years old, and then in choirs and on stage by 6, where I was also acting and playing and telling a story as an actress, right? Now we've got the voice. Now we've got the actress telling a story, telling someone's story. And then as in a talent show, I could tap into my own and tell stories at that young age. Then there was dance. You tell stories and feelings through your body. And so I just believe that those are beautiful gifts that are so powerful, and they infuse us with light and movement and rhythm, and shake us up, literally shake us up, but metaphorically and figuratively shake us up too, right? They move us to action. They move us to feel. They move us to forgive. They move us to scream and get angry and release. They move us to heal, right? They move us to love. Like, that's what music and storytelling and dancing does. And so for me, it has been, pun intended, like instrumental, right? Even playing the piano and playing the bells, like the mallet percussion, and playing the violin and the trumpet briefly, and playing my body like as a dancer, you know, and singing. It has just been so great because I have a story to share too that's amongst a unique population of multiracial women, and I'm still discovering what it looks like too, okay? And I think that's a big part of why I have embraced this alias, it's a screen name of mine on Instagram, Gujurican, and what I have thought about, like, do I just change it and do I make it my first and last name? And I love my name, but I want to be able to tell the unique story of how these ethnicities, how these cultures, how these languages, and in my case, how these religions too have just helped meld together and build a beautiful you, right? They can, anybody's story your story builds a beautiful you. And so that's what I have felt like, what am I an expert in? My life story, right? And I'm creating it by the grace of God as I go. And so that's been huge for me. It's been huge for me because I have been able to use music, dance, artistry, spoken word, working on TV, working with people that work on TV, broadcasting, journalism, that there's both an art and a technique and science to dance, singing, just to be able to connect to myself as well as connect to other people's life experiences. And I think that's actually one of the gifts of being a multiracial woman, and is that we can shapeshift and boundary cross. And I don't mean cross in an intrusive,
no, of course not.
But like boundary negotiate, because I have seen things that people may not have seen before, because I was raised talking to my abuelita, en paz descanse. I felt her this morning, like shining over me, you know, like I was talking to my Puerto Rican grandmother on the phone on you know, at one moment and one day, and the next day that week I'm dancing at a Sweet 16, like an Indian dances with my Indian, like South Asian friends, right?
Yeah.
And so, and you know, and then on a Sunday morning, you know, like on a Sunday morning I am going to church, and then on a Sunday evening or Friday evening I was going to mosque. So I was living a very enriched life with these different cultures and these religions in New Jersey, which has got its own culture, believe it or not, right? So its own. So I can't say enough about how I'm grateful for the gift of music, you know, laughter that comes through voice and song and dance, to cultivate the tools to help me understand myself, understand my experience, embrace my joys, embrace my sufferings in those experiences, and also like tell my story, so that then I can connect and understand other people's stories too, and ultimately make an impact in the world, right? So
absolutely. And the lenses that we are given are give us the ability to just, you know, I always make a joke that it's kind of like Shrek says, you know, like that, you know, he's onions, right? The layers of onions.
Yes.
And then for me, I'm like, I think about that because it's funny, but it's also because it really is a good way to describe, especially when you have several identities living in you, several, you know, I super appreciate the fact that you even brought up religion, several backgrounds in various ways. And so that just helps you to uncover different layers that others may not have access to, right? or that others have access to, but depending on where they are in their journey, they're not quite there yet, or maybe they're going to go in a different route. It's like the choose your own adventure of culture and identity. And I mean, I go on about this probably at least once in every interview, but music and dance and you know, theater as well are ways that I think that we can explore that.
Mirrors, right? They talk about there's mirrors and windows. Windows when you look out and you see someone else's perspectives, and that's great to learn about somebody else, but you want to know a little bit more about you. And sometimes when there's people that go through similar experiences or similar cultural backgrounds or linguistic backgrounds, they can help you see you.
Yes.
As a mirror. So I
love that. Windows, mirrors, and then in early childhood education, I also, in my work, I also learned about sliding doors.
Ooh.
To be able to step through and actually be able to like live in other experiences or in experiences that are parallel to other folks' experiences and be able to experience that.
That is so cool.
Yeah, this is a way that we can also like share with people regardless of who they are.
Right.
You know, that experience and that perspective. Right. And I know that I've always found it so valuable that when I'm able to be a guest in somebody else's lens and see through their eyes, I love that. Yeah. And actually, speaking of when you said growing up, you know, you said you were one of the only Latinas in your, you were very specific about this in your upper level classes, and that when you started working for Teach for America post-college, of course, the reason of why became more abundantly clear. So can you tell us about your mindset between these two experiences and how that fuels who you are today?
Yeah. I remember being one Latina, maybe one mother Colombian female student in my honors classes at Edison High School in New Jersey in the early 2000s. And I felt really curious about that and perhaps a bit concerned too. Like, how is it? Like, how is this the case? I thought to myself back in the day, and this is not just specific to Edison High School or Edison School District or Central New Jersey or even the Northeast Coast. Like, I think this is at least, this is probably in the United States, if not in other parts of the world. Yeah. I was just like, there is something in the system here. There is something missing. If I am the only or one of the only Latinas in an upper level class, there is a gap. There is a gap in how we are serving our young people or how we are perceiving and viewing our young people that is streamlining these, people in such a way that there is not another person in here that can relate to Spanish speaking heritage and environment in their space. Right. And, for me, I think I felt that and I inquired, but it didn't go that, it didn't go a level deeper until I actually finally started to embrace and explore, my career through and post college at Rutgers University in New Brunswick. I was literally a lot called by amazing, passionate recruiters for Teach for America. And I was like, this sounds like an opportunity to serve from a social justice perspective and also learn a lot about myself in another environment too. The next thing you know, I'm being called to interview and offered a job to teach Spanish, which was on my transcript heavily. At that point I had been studying Spanish for, I think just like 8 years or so. And I was going to take my Spanish translation and interpretation background and serve students in Los Angeles. And I thought, okay, but how and why me? And I looked deeper and they said, well, you could start by observing what it would be like to actually work in an inner city environment, which is where I was called to work. And so I actually visited the schools in Perth Amboy, which is a town near where I grew up. 10 minutes away, the zip code next door. And when I walked through those doors and I actually observed the classes, I was like, wow, there are a lot of Latinos here. And what both was beautiful but also disruptive and disappointing for me was that, like, I was like, there's a beautiful community here with rich culture in Latinidad, right? And I'm only seeing bits and pieces. Like, I'm not quite sure if everything that is possible for these students is happening here to serve them. And, you know, so with all respect to the school district, to the inner city school district that I visited, I saw was like, there are people doing their very best here, and there's a gap. There's a gap in resources. There's probably a gap in potential and in teacher preparation and student achievement. And for me, I'm like, that's not okay, right? And so therefore I saw, I was like, okay, well, this mission of every child deserves, you know, equal and just access to education really drove me to see, well, what is it like if that's like this on the East Coast?
Yeah.
What is it like on the West Coast? And when I got there, it fueled who I am today. I realized, wow, like, we need passionate and compassionate leaders in front of our people, right? And everyone's people. But if I could honor and shine my light as a beacon of light and love to this slice of human beings, particularly, like, speak up and stand out and shine my light and represent for the community that identifies as Latino, Latina, Latiné, like, so be it, right? So that is really, that was just the beginning of what drove me to go and work in South LA, Compton, Carson, Long Beach, Inglewood, Watts, and many more cities for 4 years.
That's incredible. And I do want to come back to the work that you ended up doing there that was even, if I recall correctly, a surprise to you. But I want to comment on the fact that, you know, especially for anybody that might be listening that doesn't understand the Edison, Perth Amboy, like how close these cities or towns are. That's it right there.
But that's how I knew.
Yes.
This is how I knew that this wasn't something in the water. Maybe. Right. But this is how I knew that we were not talking about a different country. We were talking about 4 or 5 miles away.
Yeah.
It was the next zip code over.
Yeah.
In my zip code, I was getting what I would say was a lovely, luscious, rich, diverse, wonderful, blessed education. And 10 minutes away, had I grown up for whatever life circumstances my parents decided that they could afford and settle there and raise me there, and then I go to those public schools, it would have looked vastly different. And I'm like, what does that say about who was getting recognized? That says a whole lot that we can.
And the first thing I think about, and today we happen to be recording on a day that Pennsylvania, that's where I'm at, Pennsylvania is voting in our primary elections today. Wow. And so it's on my mind to think that, well, what was keeping Latinos potentially from living in Edison, and where are the issues there? And, you know, how people get priced out of other areas because people want to keep their school districts. And I'm not just saying that because you're talking about school districts. I'm saying that because that's literally one of the biggest things that people want to keep in a specific way, in a specific light, with a specific group of people. And we've seen this politically everywhere. And so to me, it's kind of like, wow, okay, where else were they shut out of, including Edison, that could have lended to a more diverse, vast experience educationally, but they're not. And they were probably, through life circumstances, as you said, made to live somewhere, and then their school system was what it was. And sorry, go ahead.
No, and I just want to say, and like all this to say, like, so I want to be clear. It's not that there was no Latinos or Latinas or Latinos.
No, yes.
But what I noticed and what I want to say, because I thoroughly appreciated my high school experience, but what made me scratch my head was like, how is it like I felt like I was like, there's gotta be a way. Like, how is it that what my perception was that the Latino people that you would meet in teenagers like me were either in the accelerated, not the highest level, but like the accelerated classes or the lower classes, and they just kind of stay there. Now, it does those students have their own responsibility to learn, to grow, to up level, to decide maybe I want to be ambitious and go to the next level? Sure. And maybe they did or didn't do that. But I thought the fact that there was not even one more, like there was me and this Colombian girl that had, I think immigrated several years before, like that's substantial. Sort of. It was a small percentage, but I thought there's got to be something about what's going down, and even in those classes, that is not saying like, okay, and if you do this, you could get to this level, and this level. It's kind of, and to your point, then it kind of said like, well, it's like now they're on a track, and now are they stuck there? And they're no victims necessarily, but we need to create the pathways to say, hey, this is where you're at right now, and here's where you can go, and here's how you can get there. And it concerns me that like, it makes me question now in my upbringing back then in the public schools, like, were there advocates for those kids to go like, hey, yo, you're here now, this is where you're at, what do you need? Do we need to support your language acquisition and development in English, maybe in Spanish, maybe? Do we need to get you practicing at home? Maybe your family that only speaks one language doesn't know that you actually could probably doing a lot more reading and writing at home, and if you did, you could upgrade to the next level and learn some more. Like,
are resources being provided in their home language? Are they being reached out to? Or people kind of going, oh, they don't understand anyway? I mean, yeah, this all falls into that same kind of like, are the resources that are available equitable? Are we really distributing that in an equitable way? And are the people that we are either, voting into office or voting into school districts and choosing to be in our classrooms, much like yourself, are they people that are going to help build and cultivate that in a way that's going to be meaningful for people from a variety of backgrounds? Not to mention, are there people that reflect the student body in the faculty, which is going to bring me to the next question, which is about how this discovery and this kind of eye-opening experience that you had and the connection that it had to your personal life. You actually got to teach a heritage language class. So can you tell us what that is for anybody that might not know, how you approached it, and any reflections you had as takeaway?
I just feel so grateful and blessed for that experience to this day. I got a chance in my third year of teaching to open up my Spanish language department to not only teach Spanish level 1 and level 2, which was at that time teaching 9th and 10th graders, but to open up a level 3 that we called it level 3. But once we looked at who was in level 3, we said, we're going to call this level 3 heritage, because everyone who was excelling, who was at their top of the game in Spanish, were people that had that in their background, either through outside exposure or through their upbringing in their childhood. It was their home language. And so it felt so, so important to me. Talk about full circle. I was like, here is where we all Latinos here can thrive. It's like, you're at the top. You are the highest level in this school with this subject. You are at the top. You are the experts. And you deserve to feel and to be acknowledged for your skills in this language and your connection to this culture. So I'm seeing the teenagers' faces like flashing through my brain as I'm sharing. And I feel very moved because I see the smiles on their faces, kids age 14 to 18, 32 or 3 of them in a packed classroom. And there was such a love there because I think that we knew that what we had there was a safe space. And I feel just so blessed that I have had that opportunity that I'm still riding the waves of, right? To be able to create and lead that space of being self-expressed. In that room, we could say whatever we wanted to say in Spanish. And, with a grain of salt for it being in school, but I was like, This is the space for you. But it was so sweet. And I just want to share that I remember one of the key experiences that was so impactful for me as a teacher was when I assigned the assignment called La Montaña Rusa de mi vida, which translates to the roller coaster of my life. And I had students interpret that any way they liked. And let me tell you, those slideshows were life-changing. There were kids that got up in front of the room and they showed the timeline of their life like a roller coaster, and they shared the ups and downs with pictures, with videos, sometimes with stories, and we cried and we shared. But it was more than a Spanish class. It was a forum. It was an opportunity to share in our similar joys and laughters and chistes, the jokes, like things that only we would get because we have that language and culture in common. And also the differences too. Oh, that's how you Mexicans do it. Oh, that's how it is like in Puerto Rico. That's what it is.
That's what I was gonna ask. Yeah, it was a mix of student backgrounds and a mix of this, but there was something that brought you all together, and it was the language. It was, similarities in cultures or versions, right? Because when I meet somebody and they could be Peruvian, but they say something and I'm like, oh, my grandmother says the same thing but slightly different, or oh, we do that too but only this time of year, or that's just, it makes you feel more connected to somebody.
1,000%. And we got to share in each other's pains and struggles and hold space for that. I'm telling you, it was like a healing room.
Yeah.
And a fun fact, that was probably in 2011, and 5 or 6 years later, when I drove across the country, I kept in touch. Those students kept in touch with me. They follow me now. If I tell you how old they are, I'm going to feel old. But some of those students are in their late 20s now. And it's been over 10 years, right? So they're in their mid to late 20s, maybe almost 30. And they still follow me on Facebook, on Instagram. So shout out to you if you went to New Millennium Secondary School and you watch this. I love you. Oh my God, I love them so much because I learned so much from them. And I kept in touch with them, and they kept in touch with me, because like when student becomes teacher, teacher becomes student, that was completely the thing.
What I'm hearing is that you were able to enhance their experience as themselves, give them an avenue to express that, celebrate their differences, laugh, explore it, and all that. And I really appreciate, not that this would change from now on, but I appreciate the fact that they're actually in their late 20s, mid-late 20s, because you are able to see sooner the impact that this is going to have, or that this is already having on the families that they are having, on, if they're not having families, on the people that they meet. That experience, it sounds like to me, is something that, while I think you and I are both very fortunate in our cultural journeys and explorations ourselves, we just are really fortunate in that. Like, damn, don't we wish we were in something like that?
Literally.
That's amazing.
And so I think that what you're doing here, Jade, what I'm doing, what we're chatting about, is about how we can learn from our pains, learn from our struggles, learn from our joys and laughter, learn from our successes and triumphs, and like give back and also give bigger. And we might make mistakes, but we focus on impact, right? And that ripple effect, and we make change. We're change makers in our own ways when we share our light. And I have to tell you that one of those kids, no longer kids, he's a guy that like stepped up as my TA. He helped clean up my classroom and pack me up. He helped grade papers. He called me like years later. He called me a few years ago, and we're still in touch. But he called me and he was like, I had an opportunity to step away from all this, not go to college, think the worst, go down in the dumps. And I thought about the people who cared and like loved me in my life. And like, I just want to thank you. And I was just like, chills. It was he called me the day before I started a new teaching job. And I was like, this is what I do, why I do what I do. Because even if that one person who said my life was changed because people cared about me, people wanted to see me rise to the higher potential, like I've made a big difference, and everyone can do that too. You can do that too. We all do that every day.
And the fact that you, as a multiracial, multi-ethnic woman, were able to share in that with them, somebody that maybe wasn't exactly, the same background as them, but somebody that knew and understood and was born in the US, or not that they were necessarily born in the US, but that was living in the US, I should say better.
They were growing up
they were growing up here. That to me, I think, again, when I think about putting, you know, people in classrooms, I'm like, we need to have obviously more people of color, obviously more multilingual people, just in general, but especially because these moments are important because they can look at you and say, they get it. They get it. These other folks that don't necessarily reflect my experience might be very well meaning and very helpful in a lot of ways, but damn, she gets it. She gets it from a personal place.
How we share, you know, ourselves with grace. So I just, you know, anyways, I thank you for sharing that story because it's the gift that keeps on giving. Those kids are, you know, people are living their best lives. So I'm grateful.